You know, usually when we talk about getting a medical diagnosis, there's this really comforting expectation of absolute precision.
Right, yeah, like engineering.
Exactly. Like you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line on a black background, and the doctor just points to the screen and says, well, there it is. That's the problem, and here's the external fix.
It's entirely binary. I mean, broken or not broken, infected or not infected.
Yeah.
We've basically built an entire global infrastructure around that level of visible material categorization.
Right. But what if that entire infrastructure is actually looking at the wrong operating system?
Oh, wow.
What if the ultimate tool for physical healing, for mental peace, and honestly for human evolution itself isn't found in a pharmacy at all?
We're talking about an internal mechanism.
Yes. What if the machinery to fix the broken parts of us is already locked inside your own body, just sitting there in the dark, wired up, fully operational, and it's just waiting for a password?
I mean, that is a fundamental shift from viewing the body as a machine that constantly needs external mechanics to viewing the body as this self-contained, completely dormant powerhouse.
It's a huge pivot.
And that is a really jarring transition for anyone raised in a materialist culture, you know?
Exactly. And that jarring transition is exactly the landscape we are dropping you into today for this deep dive.
Buckle up.
Seriously. We are unpacking a highly detailed transcript of a video, and it's titled Gurudev Siyag's Siddha Yoga, the Comforter.
And we should clarify, this isn't just a guide to stretching or like mindfulness apps.
No, not at all. It is an architecture of a spiritual framework that claims to trigger completely automatic, involuntary spiritual and physical transformations.
It's intense. And to be clear right up front, we're going to be exploring some incredibly bold territory here today.
Very bold.
We're talking about claims of curing severe drug addiction without withdrawal, massive critiques of major world religions like Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, and even defying the linear constraints of time itself.
Right. And our job today isn't to validate these medical claims or take a theological stance on any of this.
No, absolutely not.
Think of us as cartographers, right? We are walking into this massive, complex, and highly controversial territory to map out the internal logic of how this system supposedly works without necessarily, moving into the neighborhood.
I think treating it as an internal operating system is probably the best way to approach this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're going to understand how a piece of software works, you have to understand the foundational code it was written in.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't critique a Python program for not acting like a C++ program.
So what is the base code of this specific system? Because looking at the transcript, it doesn't start with physical postures or breathing exercises at all.
Not at all.
It zooms all the way out to the literal fabric of reality itself.
Right. So the baseline code here is Advaita.
Non-dualism.
Exactly. Non-dualism.
Right.
The foundational assertion in this text is that all humans are inherently children of God, but it goes much further than just like a paternal relationship.
How so?
The philosophy asserts that absolutely everything visible, I mean, every single particle in the material universe is Brahman, the ultimate unchanging reality. Everything is one.
Okay, but let me push back on that immediately.
Sure.
Because understanding the phrase everything is one intellectually is a really nice bumper sticker. But in lived reality, there is a very obvious separation between me, you, the microphone sitting in front of me, and the concept of the divine.
Of course.
So how does this system actually bridge that gap between the high-level theory of oneness and the physical reality of separation that you and I experience every day?
Well, according to the framework of Advaita, that perceived separation is literally the glitch in our perception. It's an illusion.
Okay.
You see a wave, a ripple, and a splash,
Yeah.
and you name them three different things. And Advaita says, no, it's just water behaving differently.
So it's all the same substance.
Right. And what's interesting about how the speaker positions this in the text is that he isn't claiming to be an innovator here. He explicitly states he didn't invent this concept.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he points back to Adi Guru Shankaracharya, the ancient philosopher who systematized Advaita centuries ago. He's essentially saying, the mathematical proof for this already exists. I'm just showing you how to apply it.
So it is less of a new invention and more of a forgotten utility.
Exactly.
But what really caught my eye in the source is how this static, ancient philosophy ties into an incredibly dynamic view of human evolution.
Right, the evolutionary principle.
Yeah, because we are so conditioned to think of evolution strictly as biology. Millions of years of natural selection just to stand upright and develop an opposable thumb.
And biological evolution is agonizingly slow. But the evolutionary principle presented here is spiritual, it's ongoing, and it's intensely personal.
Interesting.
The premise is that humanity, in its current state, is incomplete.
We're unfinished.
Exactly. We're essentially walking around in beta mode,
Yeah.
and our ultimate destiny is to attain a state of absolute spiritual perfection.
And crucially, the speaker insists this isn't some exclusive VIP club.
No.
The transformation he experienced is supposedly available to every single human being on the planet. Caste, religion, nationality, all of it is completely irrelevant because the hardware is universally installed in every human body.
Which is exactly where the friction begins.
Oh, I bet.
When you claim to possess a universal internal method for achieving perfection and healing that requires no external authority, no church, no medication, you are going to collide violently with established institutions.
Oh, the collision is head-on. The transcript doesn't shy away from this at all.
It really doesn't.
It openly states that followers of Orthodox faiths, and it specifically names Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, are troubled by this practice because it supposedly achieves the direct connection to the divine that those institutions promise, but often struggle to deliver experientially.
This is a very bold claim.
But it's the attack on the medical establishment that I find really fascinating.
The medical science part.
Yeah. The claim is that medical science is totally bewildered because people are experiencing physical healings without external medicine. Let's play devil's advocate here for a second.
Oh.
If you break a leg, you need a cast. That's just physics. How does this philosophy justify rejecting or superseding the material science of medicine?
It comes down to a strict hierarchy of causation. The dichotomy operating here is matter versus spirit.
Okay, break that down.
Modern medicine, as the speaker sees it, relies entirely on matter to fix matter. Chemicals, scalpels, casts.
Right, physical stuff.
But the philosophy argues that the physical body, the matter, is completely inert without the animating force of the spirit. It's that hardware-software divide again.
Ah, I see.
If the root cause of a physical ailment is actually a corruption in the spiritual software, throwing material pills at the physical hardware is never going to provide a permanent fix.
Yeah.
You have to debug the system at the source, which is the spirit.
So if the root is spiritual, the physical bandage basically misses the point entirely. And speaking of physical things missing the point, this leads directly into the speaker's massive critique of how yoga is practiced today.
Oh, this part was fascinating.
Because if you ask the average person what yoga is, they think of Lululemon, yoga mats, and stretching in a heated room for an hour.
The transcript takes direct aim at that exact phenomenon.
It really does.
It calls out commercial yoga,
Yeah.
explicitly mentioning prominent cultural figures like Swami Ramdev and Ravi Shankar who have popularized it. It is highly critical of the fact that yoga has been institutionalized.
Like reduced to university syllabuses taught by college professors.
Yes.
To carry the software analogy forward, it feels like the speaker is saying that modern physical yoga is like having a deep systemic virus in your computer's motherboard, and your solution is to take a microfiber cloth and really thoroughly wipe down the monitor.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it.
Right. Sure, the screen looks cleaner, you might feel a little more flexible, but the internal system is completely untouched.
The underlying non-dual philosophy, Vedanta, is described as being completely crippled without true yoga.
They need each other.
Right, they are two halves of a whole.
Yeah.
Philosophy without practice is just academic posturing,
Yeah.
and practice without the deep philosophical framework is just gymnastics. You cannot stretch your hamstrings and expect to realize Brahman.
Okay, so if going to a studio and comporting into a downward dog isn't the answer, what actually is?
That is the big question.
Because the transcript claims there is a highly specific method to access this animating spirit. Where do you even go if not to a teacher or a class?
You go inward. The most radical shift in the Siddha Yoga is the location of the ultimate authority.
Okay.
The true guru isn't a charismatic person standing at the front of a room. The true guru is an energy seated inside your own physical body.
Yogis traditionally call this energy Kundalini. But what surprised me in the transcript is how loose the speaker is with the nomenclature.
Oh, the names.
Yeah, he says you can call it Radha, Sita, Parvati, Amba, or Durga. Why the interchangeable names? If this is a precise internal science, why does it matter what deity you name it after?
Because it bridges the gap between abstract esotericism and human devotion.
Oh, I see.
By equating the Kundalini energy with these specific divine feminine figures, the system makes a highly technical, almost clinical yogic concept accessible to someone who operates through the language of faith.
That makes a lot of sense. The name is just the user interface.
Precisely. The function of the energy remains exactly the same regardless of what icon you click to open it on your desktop.
And the physical description of this energy is incredibly specific. It's described as lying dormant, totally unconscious, at the very base of the spine, coiled exactly 3.5 times.
This serpent power.
Right. And the implication there is staggering, that most of us are walking around using a fractional percentage of our actual capacity because the main power grid is literally turned off.
It is entirely dormant. But here is where we hit a massive speed bump in the text.
The warning.
Yes. It promises that you can unlock 100% of your potential, but it immediately follows that promise with a severe warning. Quoting the philosopher Sri Aurobindo, the text states that trying to awaken this power on your own without a true guru is highly dangerous.
Yeah, it heavily criticizes these Swayambhu gurus, the self-proclaimed teachers who've never submitted to their own guru.
Right.
It points to Patanjali's ancient yoga sutras, noting that to achieve samadhi, that ultimate state of consciousness, you need deeply rooted concentration, dharana. You can't just stumble into it.
No, it requires a guide.
But hold on, this is where I get stuck on a contradiction in the text.
What's the contradiction?
Well, the text sets up this energy as being incredibly dangerous to mess with. It's like a high-voltage transformer in your basement.
Sure.
Aurobindo warns against it. It requires a true lineage. But then the transcript just explicitly gives out the password.
It does.
It flat out says the catalyst is a Beej Mantra, a seed mantra, and names it as a word associated with Krishna. Kling or Kleem. If it's so dangerous, why is the speaker just handing out the nuclear launch codes in a public video transcript?
That is a fantastic point, and it gets to the core of how mantras theoretically function in this tradition.
Yeah.
You have to differentiate between knowing a word and being initiated into a mantra.
Okay, what's the difference?
Anyone can read the word cling. You can shout it in traffic. But a bija mantra, a seed mantra, operates on the premise of energetic transmission.
So the source of the word matters.
Right, the seed has to be planted by someone who already has a fully grown tree. The word itself is just the vessel.
Oh, wow.
The danger, according to this framework, isn't in knowing the word. The danger is trying to forcefully pry the Kundalini awake through intense, unguided physical practices or sheer willpower without that protective energetic transmission from a master.
So the mantra acts as an authorized login. If you try to hack the system physically, you blow the circuits. But if the guru gives you the mantra, it's an authorized key. And when that key turns, the physical reactions described are wild. The transcript talks about involuntary movements completely taking over the body.
This is the mechanism of the awakening. Once the dormant energy is alerted, the upward push violently reverses the normal downward flow of energy in the body, which yogic science refers to as apanavayu.
Apanavayu is the grounding force, right? Like elimination, moving downwards.
Correct. When Kundalini wakes up, it flips that current. The energy surges upward, and as it does, it automatically applies what are known as bandhas, or energetic locks within the body. And this is where the total loss of agency happens.
Which is terrifying for modern people. I mean, we are obsessed with autonomy and controlling our bodies.
Oh, completely.
But the text insists you don't actually do this yoga. The awakened energy makes you do it. Like, if you have a blockage in your lungs, the internal intelligence forces your body into rapid breathing, like Kapalbhati. If there's an issue with your spine, it bends you backward. You are completely surrendering the steering wheel to an internal autopilot.
It is absolute surrender. The conscious mind steps out of the way, and the raw, intelligent energy of the body diagnoses the blockages and physically forces the organism to clear them.
Which naturally begs the question, who is the guy who figured this out? Who is the architect of this specific movement?
Right, Gurudev Siyag.
Because when you hear claims about internal cosmic energy hijacking your nervous system to evolve your soul, you picture like an ascetic mystic who has been living in a Himalayan cave since he was a teenager, eating snow and meditating.
That's the stereotype.
But his origin story is the exact opposite of that.
It is profoundly mundane. By his own admission, he was an ordinary accounts clerk working for the railways.
A clerk.
He was a bureaucrat, a man who dealt entirely in ledgers, numbers, and the material world.
And he wasn't just secular. He describes himself as an arrogant atheist. He actively rejected spiritual principles. So how does a skeptical railway clerk transform into a global guru claiming mastery over cosmic energy?
Pure, unadulterated existential terror.
Oh.
The inciting incident wasn't a noble quest for enlightenment. It was a desperate attempt to survive. An astrologer friend of his, Dr. Sharamji Dubey, looked at his astrological charts, and predicted a Markesh.
A Markesh. What is that?
It's a highly specific, mathematically calculated period of imminent death.
Just imagine that. You are a staunch atheist, completely grounded in reality, and someone you trust tells you that your death is approaching on a schedule.
It would be horrifying.
The sheer panic must have been overwhelming. Because the text says he resorted to religion purely out of desperation. He started chanting the Gayatri Mantra, which is a very ancient, ubiquitous Hindu chant.
But he didn't just casually recite it before bed.
No, the scale of what he did is crucial. He engaged in a massive fire ritual, burning 2 to 3 kilos of ghee clarified butter while chanting the mantra 125,000 times.
125,000 repetitions.
To bring back our technology analogy, if the mantra is a password, he didn't just guess it once. He ran a brute force hacking script on his own consciousness.
That's exactly what it was.
He just hammered the system with this mantra over and over and over again, completely terrified for his life. He didn't even understand the deep meaning of the chant. He was just trying to outrun the clock.
And that sheer, frantic, continuous psychological and physical pressure eventually cracked the system wide open.
It's incredible.
The physical transformation he details is fascinating,
Yeah.
especially given his background. Because he worked near doctors and had actually seen human anatomy, he had been shown dead bodies and knew exactly where the organs were.
Right.
His perception of the internal body was clinical.
Right.
But suddenly, he began to perceive an inner light.
And the visual is one thing, but the auditory hallucination or reality, depending on how you view it, is what really stands out to me. He describes hearing a constant deafening humming inside his stomach.
Yeah.
And he doesn't use poetic language for it. He compares it directly to the sound of a bathroom tap that has been left running at full blast with water endlessly hitting the basin. He actually woke up thinking a pipe had burst in his house.
In classical yogic texts, this is known as anahata nada, the unstruck sound.
The unstruck sound.
Yes, it is a hallmark of a major energetic shift within the subtle body. But he is experiencing this entirely without the theological vocabulary to explain it.
But the people around him who did have the vocabulary noticed immediately. When he traveled to places like Bikaner and Pushkar, which are steeped in these traditions, practitioners recognized that he had achieved a state of spiritual perfection or power.
They saw it in him?
They realized the massive effort he put in had broken what they called a locked mantra.
Right. The concept of a locked or kiloho mantra is a safeguard. It implies that certain high-voltage spiritual chants are energetically encrypted.
Okay.
You can recite them casually all day long and nothing happens. But under the right conditions, or in his case, through sheer, desperate brute force, the encryption breaks, and the full force of the energy is unleashed.
But the text highlights a massive, glaring paradox in how he achieved this.
Oh, the idol worship paradox.
Yes. We spent the first 10 minutes of this conversation talking about Advaita, the ultimate formless reality, the idea that everything is one and focusing on material things is an illusion.
Right.
Yet the speaker admits that his own ultimate salvation came through focusing intensely on a physical, inanimate object.
The photograph.
Yes. He explicitly states that he prayed to a picture of his guru implied to be a 5-faced image purely to have his life spared. He wasn't meditating on the formless Brahman, he was staring at a piece of printed paper and begging not to die.
It's wild.
And yet, that intensely materialistic focus on an idol is what triggered his realization of the formless.
It's the ultimate irony, and it's brilliant that he acknowledges it. It completely recontextualizes the debate around idol worship.
How so?
The implication is that the inanimate object, the paper, the stone, the statue, holds zero intrinsic power. It is merely a focal lens.
Oh, like a magnifying glass.
Exactly. If you focus sunlight through a magnifying glass with enough intensity, it starts a fire. The picture of his guru was the magnifying glass that concentrated his desperate survival instinct so sharply that it burned a hole right through his material reality.
That makes perfect sense. The intensity is what matters, not the object. And even after this massive realization, the guy still didn't want to be a guru. He fought it.
You really did.
He argued with his own guru, pointing out the obvious. I am a grahasa. I'm a householder. I have a day job. I wear slacks and a button-down shirt. Nobody looking for enlightenment is going to listen to a railway clerk.
Which is a highly rational objection. The spiritual marketplace is built on aesthetics, robes, ashrams, asceticism. But his guru's instruction was remarkably passive. He told him he didn't need to perform exorcisms, he didn't need to do magic tricks, and he certainly didn't need to change his clothes, he just needed to give darshan.
Meaning, just be present. Let people sit in your energetic field.
Exactly. The authenticity of the energy would supposedly do the work. regardless of the packaging. It took him years to fully accept this, finally retiring in 1990 to take this mission global.
And thank goodness he waited until he was ready, because the claims he starts making once he fully steps into this role fundamentally shatter our basic understanding of biology, reality, and time.
This is where it gets really radical.
Let's move into the truly radical territory of this transcript. It starts with physical healing, but not just fixing a bad back. The text talks about what it calls the intoxication of the spirit.
It positions the internal spiritual awakening as the ultimate, permanent alternative to worldly substances.
Okay.
It relies on the poetry of mystics like Kabir and Guru Nanak, who sang about the intoxication of the name of God, a high that never produces a hangover and never fades.
Metaphors are great, but the text grounds this in a terrifyingly modern reality. It brings up a story of a boy who was severely addicted to intravenous heroin.
Such a tragic situation.
And the claim is that through practicing the Siddha Yoga and receiving the Beej Mantra, this boy was entirely cured of his addiction.
And we must emphasize the specific, impossible detail of this claim. He was allegedly cured completely without experiencing any withdrawal symptoms.
Okay, let's stop and unpack the biology of that, because that is a monstrous claim.
It really is.
Anyone who has studied addiction knows that heroin physically alters the architecture of your brain. Your dopamine receptors are hijacked. When you stop, your central nervous system goes into absolute chaos.
Right. The body rebels.
Vomiting, muscle spasms, excruciating pain, psychological terror. You cannot just meditate your way out of a severe chemical dependency in an afternoon. The body will literally rebel.
From a strict neurobiological standpoint, a sudden cessation of severe opiate use resulting in zero physiological withdrawal is considered virtually impossible. The receptors demand the chemical.
So how does the text justify this?
It goes back to the concept of Kundalini completely hijacking the nervous system. The argument is that this isn't a psychological trick where the boy just had really strong willpower.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. The claim is that the awakened energetic force is so dominant that it immediately rewires the brain circuitry. It floods the system with an internal chemical equivalent, that Amrita or nectar we mentioned earlier, that instantly satiates and overrides the cellular demand for the external opiate.
It's treating the biological addiction as a secondary symptom of a spiritual deficit. Once the primary spiritual deficit is flooded with energy, the biological craving vanishes. It's wild.
It is.
But the text doesn't stop at overriding chemistry. It moves on to overriding death itself, specifically through reincarnation.
The transcript uses an anecdote to explore this. The speaker is having a conversation with a girl named Elizabeth, who is researching world peace.
Right.
To explain the deep restlessness of humanity, he pivots to the concept of past lives, bringing up a story about 3 young boys in the city of Bikaner.
And he focuses on one boy in particular, a 10 or 11-year-old kid. This kid adamantly claimed that in his immediate past life, he was an airplane pilot.
Right.
Now, my first reaction is, kids have active imaginations. They watch a movie and suddenly they are a dinosaur or an astronaut. But the text claims this wasn't just imagination.
No, it goes further.
The boy's father was so disturbed by the specificity of the kid's claims that he somehow arranged to take the boy on a plane. And the story claims this 11-year-old intuitively knew exactly how the cockpit instruments worked and knew how to land the aircraft.
He possessed highly technical, specialized knowledge that a child of his background simply could not have acquired in his current lifespan.
This is where I have to push back again. I can almost entertain the idea of a soul carrying over vague memories or emotional traumas from a past life. But flying a plane requires fine motor skills.
Yeah.
It requires muscle memory, spatial awareness, and a highly developed physical cerebellum to process the dashboard data. How does this non-dual philosophy justify the transfer of hard physical technical skills across lifetimes when the original physical brain has rotted away?
It forces us to reconsider where memory actually resides.
Okay.
In the materialist view, memory is strictly stored in the physical synapses of the brain. When the brain dies, the hard drive is wiped.
Right.
But in the framework of this text, the physical brain is just the monitor. The actual hard drive, the true repository of consciousness, skills, and deep impressions, called samskaras in Sanskrit, resides in the subtle body.
The subtle body.
Yes, the subtle body survives the physical death and incarnates into a new physical form. So the software containing the pilot training was seamlessly downloaded into the new 11-year-old hardware. The child's new brain didn't learn it. It just accessed the existing file from the subtle body.
That is a staggering way to view human capability. And if consciousness isn't bound by the birth and death of a single body, It completely alters our relationship with time, which introduces easily the most mind-bending concept in the entire source text.
Kachari Mudra.
Yes.
Kachari Mudra is a highly advanced, heavily guarded practice in classical Hatha and Kundalini Yoga.
The physical execution sounds bizarre. The text briefly describes it as the tongue folding backward, sliding up behind the nasal cavity to press against a very specific point in the upper palate.
Physiologically, it is said to stimulate the pituitary and pineal glands. But spiritually, activating this circuit is the key to unlocking vast, seemingly impossible psychic potential.
The claims tied to Kachari Mudra here are almost science fiction. The text says it grants the practitioner the ability to see and hear across infinite stretches of space and time.
Because the underlying theory the seeker presents is that a spoken word is never actually destroyed.
Right. We assume a word is a temporary disturbance in the air. I speak, the sound waves hit your ear, the energy dissipates, and the word is gone.
But the source argues that those vibrations never dissipate. They echo eternally in the ether.
Wow.
And a practitioner who has achieved this mudra can theoretically tune their consciousness like a highly sensitive radio dial to pick up words spoken in the distant past.
The text gives the specific example of the mythological battlefield of Kurukshetra, right? The site of the Mahabharata.
Yes, exactly.
It claims a master could sit today and physically hear the conversations between Krishna and Arjuna that took place thousands of years ago.
But the temporal manipulation goes in both directions. It isn't just a historical tape recorder.
Wait, really?
The text claims you can tune the dial forward. A practitioner could hear a conversation that hasn't even happened yet, words that won't be spoken for another 10 years into the future.
This requires a total destruction of how we perceive time. We experience time as a linear track. We are on a train moving from the past into the future. But if you can hear the future right now, time cannot be a track.
Exactly. This philosophy views time as a static, fully completed landscape. Everything that has ever happened and everything that ever will happen exists simultaneously.
So how do we picture that?
I like the analogy of a DVD. If you are a character inside the movie, you experience the plot linearly. Scene A leads to scene B.
Right, you're stuck in the timeline.
But if you're the person holding the physical DVD in your hand, the opening credits, the climax, and the ending all exist concurrently in the palm of your hand. You can skip to chapter 5 or rewind to chapter 1 instantly.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Achieving Kachari Mudra, according to the text, elevates your consciousness out of the movie and makes you the person holding the disc.
You transcend the timeline, and the text immediately leverages this supposed mastery over time and geography to make a highly controversial historical claim regarding Jesus.
Yes, the speaker brings up a book he authored titled Religious Revolution and zeroes in on one of the greatest historical mysteries in Western theology, the missing 18 years of Jesus' life.
The biblical narrative describes Jesus as a youth in the temple and then completely goes dark until he emerges as a 30-year-old teacher. There is a massive gap in the historical record.
Huge gap.
And the transcript boldly claims to fill it. The speaker asserts that during those missing years, Jesus physically traveled to India, specifically to the region of Kashmir.
And the claim goes further. While in Kashmir, Jesus allegedly lived with Siddha's perfected yogic masters and studied this exact spiritual technology.
Wow.
He learned the non-dual philosophy, mastered the internal energies, and then took that profound Eastern mysticism back to the Middle East to begin his ministry.
It is a massive theological landmine. The text is essentially claiming that the miraculous foundations of Christianity are actually rooted in Indian Siddha Yoga.
Yes.
Now again, adhering to our cartographer ground rules, we are not here to debate the historical accuracy of a first-century trip to Kashmir, but look at why the text includes this. It is a strategic positioning.
How so?
By claiming Jesus was a student of this system, the speaker is positioning this specific yoga not as a localized Indian sect, but as the universal root code of all genuine spiritual attainment across all cultures.
It reinforces the initial premise this hardware is installed in every human and every great master throughout history, regardless of their cultural packaging, was simply accessing the same internal operating system.
But all of these spectacular claims, time travel, rewriting history, curing addiction, the text ultimately utilizes them to address the most grounded, terrifying reality of human existence.
The fear of death.
Exactly. The one thing every single person listening to this right now eventually has to face.
It is the ultimate human anxiety, the shadow hanging over every achievement. And the text doesn't approach it with fluffy platitudes. It approaches it with a deeply sobering, visceral anecdote.
The speaker shares a meditative vision he experienced concerning a devastating earthquake in Latur, Maharashtra.
For context, this was a massive real-world seismic event in 1993 that claimed nearly 10,000 lives. It was an absolute tragedy.
The text claims that during a meditation, the speaker had a horrific clairvoyant vision of this event as it was happening. He describes the sheer suddenness of it.
It's a brutal image.
He saw people literally sinking into the earth, the ground opening up and swallowing them by the dozens, 10, 20, 30 people dying instantly without a single second to prepare.
It is a brutal reminder of mortality. The text uses this vision to strip away our complacency. It essentially grabs the listener by the shoulders and says, you know you are going to die. You know there is absolutely no way to escape it, and it could happen at any second. So why do you spend your entire life terrified of it?
According to the framework we've been mapping, the reason we are so terrified is blamed on Maya.
Maya is a highly complex philosophical concept. In casual conversation, it is often translated simply as illusion, which makes it sound like a magic trick.
Right, like a sleight of hand.
But in this deep, non-dual context, Maya is the fundamental structural ignorance of reality. It is the glitch in the software that makes consciousness identify completely and exclusively with the physical body.
Yeah.
Because of Maya, we believe that when the physical heart stops, we cease to exist. That total annihilation is what makes death terrifying.
But the text quotes the mystic poet Kabir again to offer a completely inverted perspective on mortality. The quote is, "The death the world fears fills my mind with joy."
Which to a purely materialist mind sounds deeply pathological. How can the destruction of your existence fill you with joy?
Right. But this is where the entire system we've discussed coalesces. The goal of this yoga isn't to be a little more relaxed at the office. The objective is to force open what they call the third eye through the awakening of Kundalini.
The ultimate goal.
Once that happens, the practitioner experientially realizes, not just intellectually understands, but actually feels their absolute unbroken connection to Brahman.
The illusion of Maya shatters. They realize they are not the physical body. They are the eternal software that was temporarily utilizing the hardware.
So death isn't death.
Therefore, the destruction of the physical body isn't a death at all. It is simply a change of clothes.
The text asserts that through this practice, a person achieves moksha, or liberation, while they are still alive.
Jivan Mukta.
Yes, the term is Jivan Mukta. If you achieve that state, the fear of death instantly evaporates because you have already crossed the finish line. You know what is on the other side before the race is over.
And because Gurudev Siyag firmly believed he held the actual, accessible password to this ultimate liberation, the final section of the transcript shifts drastically in tone.
It really does.
It moves from esoteric mysticism to the intense urgency of a global modern mission.
It is fascinating to see ancient philosophy collide with modern mass media. The transcript details a live broadcast on a television channel called TV Asia.
The text specifically notes this was a channel once associated with the Bollywood megastar Amitabh Bachchan, which immediately signaled its massive reach within the diaspora.
He went on live television and broadcasted this philosophy directly into the living rooms of Indian Americans, and the reaction described in the text was explosive. It sparked a wildfire of interest, particularly within the vast network of the Patel community in places like Ahmedabad and the United States. It was viral marketing before the internet. People were desperately trying to track him down, like, where is he going to be next? How do we get this Beej Mantra?
It perfectly illustrates the rapid scalability of an idea when ancient thirst meets modern distribution. But alongside this rapid expansion, there is a distinct tone of protective frustration in the speaker's words.
Yes, he acknowledges his growing website and the global reach, but he makes a very specific, almost desperate plea to the print media.
The print media specifically.
He asks journalists to treat the Beej Mantra, that word cling, with absolute respect. He doesn't want it printed casually as a joke or analyzed purely as a cultural quirk in the Sunday paper. He views this as highly volatile, sacred technology.
He emphasizes that this movement isn't a local cult. It isn't a passing wellness fad. He views it as a divinely ordained global mission designed to trigger the next phase of human evolution.
And he ends with a declaration of absolute certainty,
stating that no power in the world can stop it.
It is an incredible narrative arc. Look at the distance we have traveled in this transcript. We started with a terrified, atheistic railway clerk desperately trying to outrun an astrological death sentence.
And we end with a man who believes he possesses the universal code to human liberation, broadcasting it to the world.
We have mapped an immense conceptual landscape today. From the foundational theory of Advaita that all separation is an illusion to the internal methodology of awakening the dormant Kundalini through a seed mantra.
We've debated the radical implications of that awakening the internal energy, hijacking the nervous system to cure addiction without withdrawal, the transfer of technical skills across lifetimes, and the ability to step outside the timeline through Kachari Mudra.
And ultimately, how this entire complex architecture is designed to defeat the singular universal fear of death by realizing our eternal nature.
So as we pack up our maps and step back out of this territory, what does this all mean for you?
Why should you, listening to this right now, care about this text? I think the relevance here is profound, completely independent of whether you adopt the theology. Whether you literally believe in a coiled serpent energy at the base of your spine, or whether you view this entire system as a highly complex psychological metaphor for accessing deep subconscious states, the text offers an incredibly empowering counter-narrative.
It directly challenges the pervasive modern assumption that you are a broken machine, fundamentally dependent on external experts, external chemicals, and external validation to be whole.
Exactly. It presents a radical thesis, the ultimate answers to your mental peace, your physical healing, and your deepest existential fears are not products you can buy on Amazon.
They aren't degrees you have to study for externally.
No. The machinery of your own salvation is already fully installed within you. It is a philosophy of extreme, radical self-reliance, cloaked in the language of Eastern mysticism.
And as we close this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final lingering concept to mull over, inspired by the text's radical view on time and vibration.
The assertion that a spoken word is never destroyed, that it simply echoes forever in the fabric of the universe, waiting to be heard.
If that is mechanically true, if every vicious argument you've ever had, every quiet word of comfort you've ever offered, every secret you've ever whispered is still actively vibrating out there somewhere in the vast static landscape of time, what exactly does your echo sound like?
That is a thought that will definitely stay with you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the landscape, keep exploring the architecture of ideas, and we'll see you next time.
Kling, Krishna, 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 kling.